I just got up and got a phone call from a guy who wants me to do an illustration for him of a 1911 pistol, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm working on some rough sketches. It's for a patch design. He's a fellow YouTuber. But anyway, I came across Anton's videos, and I mean, people that have, you know, known my uh, history on here, they know that I have a special relationship with Anton. As a matter of fact, I was Skyping with a friend in Thailand last night, and she asked why is it you have this interaction the way you do with Anton? Because I thought, I really should be celebrating the guy instead of criticizing him. And and I kind of came to grips like, look, I'm not gonna work with the man. I'm not gonna criticize him, but I will go ahead and approach his ideas, because there will be an overlay at some point. You just attack the guy, and it was interesting to see Amentam, mention, I don't like the agenda that you're on. I'm doing everything I can to stop the Corey Anton agenda, or something to that effect. Very impressive, because um, some of what some of what Anton brought up in this last video was very interesting. But so what I told the Thailand lady is, I said, well, he's kind of like Jim Morrison in that his lyrics are obfuscated, in that with the words he says, where he's drawing the vocabulary from is like awkward instance, and the first animal is jettisoned, uh, true sailing is dead, uh, carefully combed over in mute nostril agony, and we were also talking about conference report, and I said, well, conference report is more, like he's speaking in more vernacular statements, like, I want to be a billionaire, so bad, or something like that, and so I said, so there's this automatic emotional tie that is somehow bounding me to some of the words that Anton says. Well, anyway, and I said, and he likes to take words that already have a historic, through the philosophical canon, and he's rewording them as philosophers do, to get at a very specific nuance. But in some cases, I would say, kind of like his notion of dreamless sleep, one could say is akin to saying that which is unconscious, or unconsciousness, or when Anton says authorial disambiguation, it's who wrote it, who's the author. It's meant to be a specific approach, in that it's different, differently said, but a lot of his words, my challenge to people is to find out what other vernacular word is he using, that's already been used in philosophical canons before he's introducing these other ones. So it does make it very poetic. Anyway, as far as the questions that Anton's asking, he says memory is a part of nature, and we are a part of that nature. And he's basing, he's talking about memory in terms of it's increasing on a phylogenetic level as we move up the phylogenetics. And so if you look at memory in terms of a reiteration of behavior, whether or not it's a reiteration of words, whether or not it's a reiteration of knowing how to move through things. One could say, oh, birds fly south for the winter. Oh, well, they're pretty high up the phylogenetic scale, because they fly back. So they're remembering where they go and where they come back. Well, bees do the same. They're a little bit lower. They go out, seek food, they come back. They have a memory of where they're coming back. They can even move nests. Queens of ants can move nests, and the worker bees can remember the new home. And then you think of a reiterability of bacteria, and to say this is memory, it's like remembering to breed, so to speak, remembering to live in a host. If you just reduce memory to reiterability itself of behavior, of action, and say, well, our memory really isn't that particularly different, right? If you approach it that way and it's like, oh well, this is a reiterating of an idea, and then you also compare that, or you juxtapose that idea of people that have really, really poor memories. I mean, there's a lot of people with very, very poor memories. They don't exercise it. They don't have a behavior, mnemonic devices. So you take those two ideas together. It's really interesting to speak about memory, and to actually say, well, if you're alive today, if you're an entity, if there's any degree of sentience, you're reiterating something, whether or not you're human or not human. And so, Greytex had mentioned at one time that Anton's a speciest, and so it's always trying to delimit the difference between what's happening in animals from what's happening in humans. That seems to be one of the delimiting ideas that Anton puts forth quite regularly. Okay, as far as his second question, can a robot give a hug? I mean, he was speaking about something a little bit more specific, but he extended it into the idea of, like scientific materialism. Kind of like, to say we download your consciousness into another machine. Okay, well, granted, yeah, robots don't breathe, so he's making a delimitation between that which came from the earth and that which is, developed from the human mind, right? Which is kind of ironic in that he likes to stack these ideas of what comes out and what comes from where, almost to say that memory is a part of nature. Well, then is not all human creations also an extension of of nature? And that if something is so far separated, in terms of a machine like Watson, looking back at us, if Watson passes a Turing test, right, meaning if we're convinced that he is a human, if we could become convinced of that, then that does the job. So a lot of my criticism of Anton is that philosophy is also what we call things. It's also what we call things. And what I mean by that is, can a robot give a hug? Well, yes, if you go up and it wraps its arms around you and hugs you, and somebody says, "Look, Mom, the robot gave Dad a hug," right? Then that already qualifies as a hug, because it's part of already the dynamics of the use of language. And so part of it is what we call it. The robot does give a hug because that's how we reference it. But now Anton's approaching things from more of an ontological, all of the human dimensions of emotion and metabolism shared, and that defines a hug. Well, once again, the Turing test, if at one point there's a robot that we cannot tell is not like data, right? Hypothetically, that could give us a hug and we couldn't tell the difference, then yes, it gives us a hug. Because logically speaking, I'm that robot, right? And you guys just don't know it yet because you're living in 2011 technology, and I quite frankly come from the future, right? So the whole point is could I give a hug and you be convinced? Well, certainly, right? So that's another thing. Now, words are not negentropic, right? Anton's going to approach things like, he talks like humans are part of a cosmos and you're part of a system and smaller within a system. Consider this. Since my umbilical cord for my robot mom, right, was cut, all of the exhalants, all of the all of my poo and piss, all of my air that I've ever exhaled, if we were to be able to map every single atom I've inhaled, I imagine there's still a large amount of other animals and entities and little bugs hidden in recesses in the Amazon, or bacteria in the Antarctica, that is not influenced by either my words, right, or my sight. I've never seen them. They've never seen me. They've never touched anything, any atom that I have ever touched. Right now, we might go so far as to say that. Other people say, well, everyone's inhaled an atom that Christ exhaled. Well, that may be the case, but consider the idea that there is limitations to one's impact on that cosmos. And this brings me back to words, right? Words are not negentropic. Anton, he's using the eidetic realm. The eidetic realm it's a generated word by Derrida, and it's referencing God, right? It's already referencing kind of this notion of an ideality of God. And so he's saying words are negentropic. Well, no, and he even mentions this. It's almost like the reiterability, like cutting down an apple. How many times can you say the word apple? How many times? Before you get tired, before your metabolism gives out. How many times can you see the word apple? If it was painted all over a room that you were in, and so much for you to count, when would it lose its meaning as apple and simply become a design, right? Very important to keep in mind. The words are limited also. How many times do you read the word chloroplast, right? It's not like it's there. It's in the language for us to access, right? It's a reiterability. I do agree with that. It's a reiterability, but it's also something that requires your eyes to run across so many times, your sound to hear, or the ability to say it so many times. You're never going to say it infinitely. Now, it's kind of like and as far as data technology, in being a photographer, I already know that a reiteration of a file, of a photo, it loses the quality. Information degrades as it is reproduced, right? It's not an exact replica. So you find one source and you allow people to pull singularly off of that source. You don't say, here's one source, pull off of it, and then pull off of its copy and pull off of its copy indefinitely, because you get degradation, right? So what I'm saying is that words are not negentropic. Negentropics, that's so my point is, he's saying they're negentropic, they're part of this ideality. So keep in mind, he uses the word like the divine. Yeah, I'm into sacred, that which is sacred. But when he uses the eidetic realm, it already has a connotation to God, and he's trying to talk about divinity and place words like the divine order is part of the eidetic realm. There's something a little bit tautological or repetitive there through what he's saying. So keep that in mind, because it already implies that realm. And oh God, what do I want to say in the last minute and a half about that? Yeah, so there's a certain delimiting process that Anton's going through, where he can corral you and then funnel you and then pigeonhole you. So keep that in mind in this. Be very wary. So that the eidetic realm words, wow, now I'm just kind of babbling because I feel like I'm on a time limit. I do think people might seek transcendence as a reason. But yeah, something about the operatic. There's an indeterminacy that's being toyed with in his speaking, and this is derived out of a Derridian dialogue, and so I'm familiar with that as well. I just really wish I could come up with the point I was trying to make about that. Reiteration. Oh yeah, divinity. Instead of the divine realm, why not call it the mythic realm, right? The mythic realm, not divine math. Just as another term that he's using in terms of divinity, consider using mythic and see how that changes the meaning. So